Boy, oh boy, what a week it has been for sports. Many sports, not just one in particular. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Helmet, where we're going to bring you, first off, some coverage about the moves that have been going on in the NFL. Free agency has opened up, of course. We're at that point in the offseason after the Super Bowl, but before the NFL draft, we're even past the combine now at this point. Um, let's talk about that to open up. What are your thoughts uh, so far on what moves have been made? What's the one move that sticks out to you the most so far?
Well, first of all, supposed to introduce yourself and me.
Our
um,
20 viewers know us well enough.
okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was kind of waiting for that. No, it's interesting that they do free agency after the combine because
Mm-hmm.
guys want to see what's coming out of college and can we replace or is there somebody we're really targeting, and then they go for the known players. And I always thought free agency and trades were interesting because you're getting a person that's got some miles on the wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were really spectacular, you're not going to let them go in free agency.
Of
So
course.
I think it's more about the players saying, well, if I had a fresh start, if I was in a different system, I could shine more, and people trying to match players to their system,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. But you rarely ever see free agency signings that are uh, earth shattering. I mean, way back when, probably Reggie White was the biggest free agent that ever got signed when he left Philadelphia and went to the Packers.
Back before
Um,
salary cap, right?
no, they had salary cap then.
Really?
Yeah, they did.
Hmm.
But he just shopped around, and I think he went and had a conversation with Brett Favre and realized that the Packers were pretty close. And sure enough, the two of them actually made, turned the team into a Super Bowl champion. So,
Mm-hmm.
free agency, not quite as exciting to me. You don't really see trades as much. Not, I mean, big name people.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, I don't know if it's true because you never know what you see on the internet, but I saw that on the internet today, the Cowboys traded Odigizua to the 49ers
I
for a
saw
third
that,
round
yeah.
pick, which he's not a big name player. He's a pretty solid player.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of surprised they let him go, but maybe they have a plan to try to upgrade the position. And he's a solid veteran. But yeah, free agency. I mean, first one that stood out to me, and you and I were talking before the show. A little different. What stood out to me, the Tua Tagovailoa experiment in Miami ends after 6 seasons. I guess the Dolphins just said, look, this guy can't stay healthy. But I saw where he had one of the, if not the highest completion percentage rate in the history of the Miami Dolphins,
Yeah,
which
that
that
the
would
system
include
that they
Dan
had.
Marino. Yeah, that would include Dan Marino.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he never led them to enough victories to have him be a serious playoff contender, and that's what
Yeah.
it's all about. And he
Mm-hmm.
certainly has been injury prone. So he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, who I thought they were all in on Michael Penix, and then he got hurt,
Yeah.
and they're letting Kirk Cousins go. So two teams that are still really looking. I mean, I'd love for Quinn Ewers to step up and do something great for the Miami Dolphins, but if he was that great in the pros, he would have started more than one game in his career. Um,
Yeah.
I guess you just never know. But that was the one that stood out to me was Tua was a big name national champion at Alabama, and Miami really went all in drafting him in the first round. And 6 years later, they're going to let him walk and go to the Falcons, and he gets
Mm-hmm.
a rebirth. And I don't know. It's not really common where you see a person who hasn't lived up to what they were maybe hoped to be when they go to a new team and suddenly they catch fire.
Yeah. Um, What stuck out to me, and what maybe has stuck out to the most people so far in free agency, of course, a couple days ago, Max Crosby, the defensive end for the Raiders, got dealt to the Baltimore Ravens for, I'm sure, a pretty penny. But then come yesterday, I think it was, the deal gets canceled because of something where Max Crosby ends up failing a physical,
Yeah.
which I maybe I had heard about him being hurt earlier in this season or something, but I don't really recall a reason why he would have failed his physical. Also, doesn't that I mean, obviously I'm not in the NFL. Where I am, the level I'm at, you go to just a regular doctor with a physical that your school gives you. You know, they do that at the middle school level, high school level, even at the college level. You just go to a regular doctor's office and get a sports physical, and then you're good. It doesn't really matter where you are. But I guess in the NFL, obviously, it's a little different because each team has their own individual doctor that probably needs to conduct it. But what's really stood out to me, and this could very well just be internet speculation and people just starting rumors and drama, is that there's a little bit of foul play here,
Hmm.
um, where the Raiders, in like trying to get Max Crosby dealt to the Ravens, caused the Ravens, obviously Max Crosby, a superstar player who's worth a lot of money, is going to get paid a lot, going to be a pretty hefty kicker to the cap budget. The Ravens, I believe, were forced to dump off a pretty well known, notable offensive lineman of theirs. I think his name is Lindebaum or something like that.
Yeah. Tyler Lindebaum. Yeah.
That's right. I'm glad I got the last name correct. To free up some cap space, but then now they don't have Max Crosby and they don't have their offensive lineman that they offloaded. Now they did go and get uh, Hendrickson from the Bengals, right? Like the only good Bengals defender left.
Right. Right.
So who knows where the Bengals will be, but I don't know if he's necessarily on the same level as Max Crosby. I also think he was a little cheaper. So, but also the Raiders went and signed themselves a bunch of notable acquisitions already after seemingly getting rid of Max Crosby, offloading his cap space. And so who knows what's going to happen to the Raiders now? Are they going to be in massive amounts of debt if they now have to take on again Max Crosby's salary along with those that they have now recently signed?
Yeah, makes you wonder too with Max because he unlike I mean I know I mentioned Tua first, but
Mm,
Tua is a name person who's not lived up to the hype in the NFL.
mm-hmm.
Max Crosby came into the NFL with no hype and has far exceeded. I mean,
Oh yeah.
clearly top five defensive lineman in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was. I wish I could say I remember that he was playing at the end of last season, but even if he had some type of maybe he had a knee issue or an ankle issue or something like that, does that make you fail your physical? I mean, what about the rehab? Why does that cancel the deal?
I'm not sure if it's come out exactly why he failed his physical, so I'm sure it could be a plethora of different things.
Yeah,
Um,
well, defensive linemen take so many hits and
yeah.
brutalities on their body, and maybe it's sort of like not to dehumanize anybody here, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's sort of like when you're buying a used car. You say,
Yeah.
okay, ship the car over to me, and I'm gonna let my mechanic look at it, and if it seems like it's not going to be worth the value, or it's going to take too long or too much money, in the case of a car, to
Mm-hmm.
get it fixed, then you just cancel the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Max Crosby is going to be playing football for somebody
Oh,
next
of
season.
course.
He's not that damaged that we're aware of. He certainly was
Mm-hmm.
playing at a high level the last time I saw him.
Yeah.
So
Um,
it's interesting though. The philosophy is they're trading all these little chess pieces. You'll get some big name people that'll get traded or will move or
mhm.
and when I say people, big names. I think I saw Geno Smith was maybe going to sign with the Jets,
Yeah,
and
that went through as far as I have heard. Geno Smith is reunited with the team that he started with
yeah, and Geno's a name player who's
now.
well mostly solid, but the Jets, very interestingly, we've brought this up before. The
Hmm.
Jets won Super Bowl III with Joe Namath, who you said was underrated, I said was overrated, and it's now been 57 years since they've been to the Super Bowl. And, if you're the Jets GM, are you really going to go, well, Geno Smith, who's never been to a Super Bowl or been close, even though he's a solid player, he's going to be the guy to now lead us to the promised land.
No, I think that's if anything. I mean, look at who the Jets have on their roster as far as quarterbacks go. The Jets very clearly are in desperate need of their next franchise guy, and I
Who was
believe
their last one?
Hmm?
Who was their last one? I mean, they can't seem to land one. I know Favre and Aaron Rodgers, two a Hall of Famer and a future Hall of Famer, uh, took over for
Then,
a
then,
year at
then
the end of their
maybe
career.
maybe
But
next was a poor choice of word. They're looking for their first franchise guy in 60 years.
no,
Um,
they had right at the beginning of the 2000s, they had a still fairly viable Vinny Testaverde,
mm-hmm,
who came in and did pretty good stuff. And then I think the best Jets quarterback we've seen in the last 30 years was Chad Pennington, who
mm-hmm,
happened to be the college quarterback of one Randy Moss. And although he wasn't the most gifted quarterback, he was a winner.
mm-hmm.
And you know, and of
Well,
course they had the infamous butt fumble Mark Sanchez,
mm-hmm,
who came in and I think led them to back AFC championship games
mm-hmm.
before everything fell apart for him.
He did.
So
Well, quarterbacks with like 10 plus letters in their last name aside, what I was getting at with this whole Geno Smith nonsense is that he very much just seems like a bridge quarterback.
yeah,
He's been around the league for over a decade. He's not going to win you games, but I'm sure they're hoping that they're getting a form of Geno that they saw with the Seahawks a couple years ago, not that of the Geno Smith that we saw this past season, where he looked like the worst quarterback to ever put on black
yeah,
jersey.
sure.
Um,
I
other
wonder if
than
I
a
wonder
certain
if
Jamarcus Russell.
I wonder if a guy like Geno Smith, or because you called him a bridge quarterback, it made me think of Teddy Bridgewater,
Yeah.
who's now retired. I wonder if quarterbacks like that, who have been starters,
Hmm.
not just career backups, but brought in to be the bridge. I often wonder when they wake up in the morning, if they, at the beginning of the season, if they are as optimistic that somehow, some way this year, we are going to win the Super Bowl. This is going to be my year. Or does reality set in after a while and they say, you know what? I'm getting paid a lot of money to play this position. I'm pretty good. I don't have the team around me. I'm going to say all the right things. I'm going to try to do all the right things, hang around the league, make as much money as I can. But where I'm going with this is every young quarterback, whether they're in third grade or seventh grade or college or
They
whatever
think they're
else.
gonna grow up and be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and win 20 straight Super
I was
Bowls.
now I wasn't even going there. I was going that for the season that's upcoming, when you're having fall camp, when
Hmm.
you're gathering for 2 days in August,
Oh, you think you'll go undefeated? You think you'll throw 50 touchdowns? You think you'll
right?
be heralded as the next Terry Bradshaw?
Yeah, I
You
mean
know?
it's going to be somehow magically your year,
Hmm.
and I've often wondered if reality in the pros sets in where a guy says, "Look, this is who I am." I mean, Just to pull a name out of history, Colt McCoy
Mm-hmm.
thought he was going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Should have
He
been.
actually was he was for a year or two, and he had some big wins, but he settled in and had I don't know, how long was Colt in the league? 14 years maybe.
Sounds about right.
Um, as a backup quarterback and
Mm-hmm.
made a lot more money than he would have sitting in an office cubicle,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Uh, and he just sort of accepted that, and he would get to play and start once in a while when the starter was hurt. But I just wonder, Geno Smith goes to the Jets. Is there some reality check where the Jets GM is saying, "Look, we know you're not going to lead us to a Super Bowl," and somehow Geno is going, "Yeah, I know that too," or I wonder if he wakes up and says, "Nope, this is it. This somehow magically it's all going to turn around for me."
I think in a situation like this, you look at yourself and say, "Well, God gave me two hands. On one hand, yeah, I can be a little realistic, and if they do end up bringing in a young guy and they brought me in to try and mentor him, then I'm gonna own that. I'm gonna help out. I'm not gonna be a jerk and say, "Oh, I don't owe you anything. I'm not gonna help you out. What have you done for me? Why should I help my competition?" But then on the other hand, yeah, you're gonna wake up every morning trying to believe to the best of your ability that you are the best, because ultimately when you're in any competition, kind of paraphrasing certain Max Verstappen here, when you're in a competition, you have to believe you're the best. Whether you actually are or not, you have to believe you're the best. That's the only way to go about things.
Yeah. Speaking of Max,
Mm-hmm.
good transition because I
Thank you.
know you're excited that
Mm-hmm.
there's been some racing this week. It's getting
Mm-hmm.
started. What
Yeah.
for those of us who don't watch it, what did we miss?
You missed Oscar Piastri, hometown hero, crash into the wall on the reconnaissance lap, which is the lap where they come out of the pits to go line up in their grid spot so that they can do the formation lap, which
At
is
the
the lap
beginning.
before. Yeah, so there lots of spinning, lots of people losing control of their cars. Max notably qualified 20th because on his very first attempt at a fast lap in the first qualifying session, on the very first corner, he hit the brakes, maybe a little bit too hard, whatever, caused the rear wheels to lock up entirely, which put his car into a helpless spin into the wall. He was completely fine, and the car wasn't too damaged, but he wasn't able to really take part in qualifying, so he only qualified ahead of the two people who couldn't even take part in qualifying because they had issues with their car beforehand. So, but Max was able to recover to a nice sixth place finish. Possibly could have been on for a better finish as well, but they're still figuring out the kinks with the car. But yeah, we saw our first look at actual racing with these brand new Formula One cars, and it did provide some action. There were a lot of overtakes. I believe I saw a graphic that said there were like 120 total overtakes this past weekend in Australia, as opposed to like 40 something the year before. The cars are smaller. They do, admittedly, from the outside look better, in my opinion. But I'm questioning how genuine and authentic these overtakes are. Because if you just look at a statistic, oh, there were a lot of overtakes. That must have been really exciting with a lot of cool battles going on track. Kind of. Typically, when I like to imagine exciting, entertaining battles on a racetrack, I'm thinking people that are basically neck and neck. Like for an extended period of time, like one corner, one guy will get a better line, like he'll get the inside and he'll get ahead, but then the next corner will be going back the other way, so the other guy will get his chance to get back in front. Instead, we got a more boring version of that because with the 50-50 split with the new engines per the regulations, of course, 50% gas power like a regular engine and 50% battery, um, This battery is, of course, self-charging, but it does take time to charge up the battery, which accounts for half of your horsepower. And so, if your opponent that you're fighting with is behind you and they have more battery than you, and you're recharging your battery because you just used it to overtake them, well, then they're going to pass you right back. And then once
Hmm.
they've used up their battery and yours is recharged, you're going to get back in front of them. So it's kind of a boring back and forth of just trying to time up when to be the one who is currently on the attack at the perfect moment.
Hmm.
The most exciting part of the race, honestly, was the very start of the race. Obviously, Formula One race starts are typically pretty chaotic, just of the nature of that's when the cars will be the closest on track, obviously, as the leaders haven't had enough time to run away yet. People haven't had time to crash or have car issues. The Ferrari car, in particular, throughout preseason testing, was noted as having very quick acceleration, especially compared to the other cars, including cars that shared the same Ferrari engine. Of course, Ferrari being an engine manufacturer, just like Mercedes is, they make their own engine and then they will sell that engine to a few other teams that aren't quite as developed and wealthy as Ferrari are. They don't have the resources to make their own engine, and so they just say, "Hey, Ferrari, let's buy an engine." And they're like, "All right, cool." But strangely, Ferrari themselves had insane acceleration so far this season, and so um, Ferrari's two drivers, Leclerc and Hamilton, I believe they qualified fourth and fifth, behind the two Mercedes who locked out the front row, first and second, and then Hadjar, Max's teammate at Red Bull, qualified third, which shows good things for the potential of the Red Bull car, obviously, with the general consensus being that Max would have been even closer to the Mercedes, if not right up there with them. Anyway, at the very start, the Ferraris, as expected, do get off the line incredibly well, and Leclerc starting all the way in fourth, shoots up to taking the lead by the time they reach the very first corner. And then he and George Russell, the lead Mercedes driver, battled back and forth for the first third to the first half of the race, among people who were retiring from the race due to technical issues with the car because the cars are still very finicky and there's a lot unknown about them, particularly with these engines. All throughout practice and qualifying, even preseason testing, before we even got to Australia, there were several teams that were just having problem after problem getting their car to run consistently without stopping or having some sort of issue. So ultimately, once they kind of settled down, George Russell, who qualified first, lost the lead off the start to Leclerc. He did regain the lead and kind of cruised to an easy victory in the second half of the race, while his teammate Kimi Antonelli got off the line starting from second pretty poorly. And so he dropped, I believe, all the way down to seventh or something. But he did slowly but surely claw his way back and ended up finishing second. So Mercedes, going into the season, were believed to have the fastest car, and they pretty well proved it in Australia. Although Ferrari did show some things. Of course, a lot of people, including myself, are speculating how different the order of, like, okay, well, this team is the fastest, this team's the next fastest, this team isn't doing so well. How much that will vary between track to track, of course, with the different layouts of the different tracks, kind of requiring a different skill set in terms of what your car that you've built is good for. So with China coming up, the Shanghai International Circuit, it has like no, it's not quite a mile long. It's like 1.25 kilometers, whatever that is in our units. It has a very long straightaway, And one concern with these cars is that the battery runs out so quickly when you're using it at full power that by the end of a long straight section where you're just holding the gas down all the way, the battery runs out, and so you lose power. And so by
Hmm.
the end of the straight, even though you haven't turned or had to slow down for any corner, you've lost 40 miles an hour. So
Hmm.
with China having such a long straightaway section towards the end of the lap, it'll be very interesting to see how the cars are able to handle that and how the drivers are able to kind of fight against the car doing that. So it'll be very interesting. It'll also be interesting to hopefully see what Max can do. Of course, he recovered from 20th to 6th. It'll be very interesting to see what he can do if he is able to actually get a full qualifying done. And we also haven't seen Oscar Piastri yet or Nico Hulkenberg because, of course, I mentioned Piastri unfortunately got thrown into the wall before the race could even start, and Nico Hulkenberg, one of the Audi drivers, got wheeled back into the pits before they could get underway for the formation lap. So he didn't take part either. So the other very interesting thing was that both Aston Martin drivers ended up retiring from the race at various points, just for technical issues. Okay, come into the pit, stop the car. We're seeing some problems, but then they unretired and they came back out. That
Hmm.
Aston Martin, who have been having problem after problem with their Honda engine so far throughout testing, almost treated the race just like it was a practice session. I thought it was very interesting. I didn't really know that you could do that in modern Formula One. I know back in like the 50s or whatever, where it was just the Wild West out there and pit stops took a minute and a half. You'd have people that like had a car problem, had a breakdown, and so they'd come into the pits for half an hour and then come out 20 laps down, but they'd still be able to complete what they could of the rest of the race. I didn't realize that that was still a part of modern Formula One that you could do. I kind of thought that maybe once you're out, you're just out and they wouldn't let you back in, but I was wrong. It was
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we got a little bit of time left.
Mm-hmm.
I know last week we talked about players that we considered overrated and underrated, and
We
I was
did.
kind of thinking about it during the week. Those terms might not be exactly what we're shooting for. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as the underrated, because some of these players that we talk about being underrated are in the Hall of Fame. Um, I think instead I'd like to talk about players that aren't mentioned enough.
Okay.
They don't get enough talk about them, even
Mm-hmm.
though when their name comes up, it's sort of like, yeah, I mean, he was good, he was really good, but so underrated. Just kind of giving a definition to the underrated and
Sure.
overrated to me is a lot easier to quantify because that's players that you're just told, oh, they were great, and
Mm-hmm.
I watched them with my eyes and I didn't see that greatness. Maybe they were very good, maybe they were good. Um, but I was going to throw out for my first, not talked about enough, is a guy he got drafted. He was quarterback. He got drafted in the first round by the Patriots, and he did not really all that great, as I recall, when he was young. And he had a resurgence because you were talking about the Raiders. And somehow in there, he got traded to the Raiders. And it was a guy who actually, unlike what I said at the beginning of the show, where usually guys go to team number two and they don't suddenly blossom. And it's not like he took the league by storm, but he won two Super Bowls for the Raiders as their quarterback because he was a bombs away guy. I'm waiting for you to guess who I'm talking about.
I, I
Um,
I thought that might have gotten old, and so I just was gonna. You're talking about Jim Plunkett.
yeah, I'm talking about Jim Plunkett.
At first,
Um,
I thought you were talking about Drew Bledsoe when you talked
I
about a
I figured,
Patriots
yeah,
quarterback, but
right. No, Plunkett was one of those guys that he was soft spoken. He was not a big personality,
Hmm.
but he had a really big arm.
Hmm.
He played tough. He kind of was a quiet leader, not as quiet as Aikman was, but uh, he played on a team with Marcus Allen. I think Cliff Branch may have still been on the team. Don't know if Bolitnikov was still around, but uh, anyway, this was back when the Raiders. We're talking early '80s were Al Davis was still alive and just win baby and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And his philosophy, that Al Davis philosophy, was we are going to throw deep. We're going to absolutely put all the pressure we can on those safeties and cornerbacks. We're going to throw it deep. And some years it worked and some years it didn't. And Plunkett, people think about Raiders quarterbacks and they immediately go to Stabler for obvious reasons. He was a personality. He won a Super Bowl. He's kind of a wild guy. Plunkett was really quiet, but Plunkett had that beautiful rainbow arching, 60-yard deep ball, and they would throw it all the time. And when you mix that with a young Marcus Allen, again, it was worth 2 Super Bowls. And people start talking about, oh, the great quarterbacks of all time. I'm not putting Jim Plunkett in my top 25 or 30 probably,
No.
but his name just really doesn't come up unless you're a Raiders fan.
Hmm.
Okay? Give me somebody who's talked about too much or not enough.
Oh, it's my turn. Oh boy.
And I'll
Oh,
see if I
where?
can guess. I'll see if I can guess who you're talking about.
Well, now I feel like I have to pick a football player. Um,
Well, I
I
mean,
feel
unless
like
you
I
pick a
had a
race
name in
car
my head
driver.
like 3 minutes ago, but then I totally forgot it. I think it was an F1 driver. Um,
Uh,
I'll talk about someone. Okay, this is an F1 driver who is talked about, but I think nowadays, after he's long been retired, but I think nowadays he's not looked at in a very fond light, and okay, I think maybe this person doesn't really fit into either underrated or overrated because he's not rated very highly, despite having won a championship and having one of the best young careers, like early careers of any F1 driver of all time. Um, but this is someone who maybe I look at and I go, I cannot believe that that guy has the accomplishments that he does. And because he's not even the best Formula One driver in his own family, yet he's the only champion.
hmm.
So, who was that? Was that Bella?
Yeah, you know me. They got a house full of
Mm-hmm.
dogs over here, and
Mm-hmm.
they
I
want
just,
out.
I just wanted to see if I could guess.
That was actually Andy.
Oh, well, great. Whatever.
And Andy number 2. I should be
Yeah.
clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
But I've stalled long enough. His name is Jacques Villeneuve. He's of Canadian heritage, um, son of Gilles Villeneuve, who was a Ferrari driver in the 80s. Unfortunately, in the early 80s, he lost his life in a crash in practice. So, but he was well regarded as a very promising, because it's not like he was particularly old or late into his career when he unfortunately had his fatal accident. But he was viewed as someone who had a lot of potential and would be a very worthy world champion. But just was kind of still at that phase in his career where he wasn't quite there. But his son, anyway, grew up and went to IndyCar actually, in the U.S. And I believe he was a champion in IndyCar before moving over to Formula One with the Williams team in 1996, partnering Damon Hill, where Williams had the best car on the grid. And he nearly won the world championship as a rookie, but he lost it to his teammate. And then he came back in his second year in 1997. Now, yeah, he's not, when I say second year in Formula One, he wasn't like 22 or something like that. He wasn't young. obviously because he already had an established career in other series, but he came back as, I don't know, what, a 29, 30-year-old second year probably, and won the world championship, had a pretty dominant year. But then after that, he just left Williams. He left the
Yeah.
team that he had all his success with. Maybe it wasn't immediately the year after, but pretty soon after winning his world championship with a very dominant team, he left to try and go and
Huh.
establish uh, a, his name in a lesser team and bring them up out of nowhere and bring them to success, kind of like how Michael Schumacher had revived Ferrari in the late 90s and into the 2000s when he won 5 consecutive championships. And obviously, it didn't work out for him. And his career just fizzled out. And now he's just known for his very, very bad opinions
Hmm.
in the media. So,
Yeah.
but I guess I'm kind of breaking the rules here of the segment. Not necessarily someone who is highly rated to begin with, so I can't really say he's overrated, and I can't say he's underrated because I I think he's deserving of all the hate and the slander that he gets because he didn't seem like a genuinely good person.
Yeah.
It just seems like he was at the right place at the right time for like 2 or 3 years, and then he kind of fizzled out, and he was
Okay.
out of the sport within like 5 or 8 years. So
Okay. Well, I know we're out of time, but I had one other name I was going to
yeah,
throw
go for
out.
it. I'm struggling.
Just as a, I want to qualify or quantify the statement when I say that this guy's overrated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going upon what I saw,
Okay.
because and I didn't see probably 80% of the games this guy played just because of the market that we're in. But
Mm-hmm.
every time that I would tune in to a game he was playing in, the announcers would just slobber all over themselves and say, "This is one of the greatest players in the history of the league," um, and and then I would watch him specifically, and I rarely saw him do anything even really good, much less unique. I mean, it was the kind of praise they used to give Reggie White, for example, when he played for Philadelphia and for the Packers, and John Madden would talk about how Reggie White is just like so great. And then you'd watch, and yeah, he was throwing guys around, he was getting sacks and everything else. And so
Is
the
this a more modern player who's
just
recently
retired, yeah.
retired? Are you
Yeah,
talking about Aaron
just
Donald?
I'm talking about Aaron Donald. And the announcers were giving him Reggie White type hyperbole.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I've never looked up Aaron Donald's numbers. Maybe it just, whenever I tuned in, he had off games or something. But I would specifically watch Aaron Donald because the announcers made it a point to try to tell us not only is he a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he is unique. And I wanted to see the uniqueness. Um, and I never saw it ever. There's not one game I personally ever watched Aaron Donald where I thought, well, gee, this guy is just fantastic. And I get it. If you're that dominant, they're going to double team you, triple team you, and so you're not maybe going to have the stats. But the games I was watching, the guy was being blocked one on one, and I never saw it. I'm not saying he wasn't great. I'm just saying I never saw it, and I was looking for it. So, yeah, that qualifies in my book as overrated. But I'm quite certain when Aaron Donald reaches the 5 year, threshold to where he can be put in the Hall of Fame, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer,
Of course.
and they're all going to show his highlight reels. But I mean, heck, if we showed anybody's highlight reels, if we showed your highlight reels from high school, people would think that you were the greatest high school football player ever, like you did that on every play, right?
Yeah, that's the tricky part with highlights is like they don't tell everything, and neither do
Yeah.
lowlights. It's
Well,
very tricky at trying to analyze a player when you don't just stare them down every play of their career, or when they're not like in the spotlight like a quarterback. I mean, he played defensive line. So,
Well, and he was the defensive tackle, which is a little
hmm
bit tougher. But I remember watching real quick
hmm
back 20 plus years ago, John Randall for the Vikings,
hmm
or even farther back, Randy White for the Cowboys. I'm thinking
hmm
of defensive tackles that really stood out, and not the big nose tackle Jerome Brown guys who were playing A gap. I'm talking about actual defensive tackles. Mean Joe Green. You could watch guys like that who played defensive tackle, and if you focused on them, you'd go, "Oh, I see. I see what they're talking about." I never saw it with Aaron Donald. And, hey, Aaron Donald, if you happen to be one of our listeners and you're sitting here telling me that I'm crazy,
he bench presses
maybe
500 pounds. You might want to watch what you say.
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm saying I
hmm
didn't see it and I was looking for it. Um, doesn't mean it wasn't there because again, how many Rams games do we get down in Texas? I mean,
Now with
um,
YouTube TV and NFL Sunday Ticket, you can get all of them. Thank you to our
well,
sponsor.
you
No,
can, yeah, you can now, but I'm too lazy to do that. So anyway,
just use
that's my
my
last
account.
person. Yeah, that's my last person. We'll talk offline about that.
Yeah.
That's my last
All
person
right.
that I wanted to bring up. Jim Plunkett, underrated, and in my personal book, which Aaron Donald doesn't care what's in my
hmm
personal book, he shouldn't. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But in my
hmm
book, I just didn't see it. So that's where I end it.
Yeah, and the position he played didn't exactly open himself up to being in the spotlight all the time. So
Right.
not everyone's gonna see it the same way they're gonna appreciate an Aaron Rodgers or something like
Of
that.
course,
So.
he doesn't have the ball in his hand.
hmm
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, we are pretty out of time, but I feel bad only having one person that didn't really fit the mold of the segment. So I'll quickly bring up Fran Tarkenton as someone who I don't think is talked about enough. And I mean, kind of deservedly so because he didn't win all that much. But I mean, he was the all time leading passer at the time of his retirement. So I mean, that is certainly. I mean, he was Dan Marino with wheels and like 20 years earlier. So,
Yeah, he had the same scrambling ability that Staubach did without the
hmm
championships, and some would even say, if you're talking about scrambling behind the line of scrimmage to avoid a sack,
hmm
Tarkington. I think of Tarkington because I caught him at the end of his career
hmm
when he was scrambling, he was staying behind the line of scrimmage and keeping his eyes downfield. To compare him to what Roger did when Roger was young and scrambled,
hmm
Roger would scramble looking for guys, but was probably quicker to tuck it and run because Roger was bigger. I mean,
hmm
Tarkenton was not that big, and
yeah,
and you could say, well, you don't have to be big. Like
hmm
if
I'm
you're
bigger than Roger Staub.
if you're yeah, if you're Kyler Murray, you don't have to be big.
mm,
We didn't even talk about Kyler Murray. My gosh, we'll save that for next week. But
yeah,
he
there's
was,
plenty more.
yeah, he was quick, but Tarkenton, I never looked up what his longest run from scrimmage was, but it
hmm
couldn't have been more than 30 yards. He was literally scrambling around behind the line of scrimmage. And he was very unique. And for the young viewers who've never heard of or watched YouTube videos of Fran Tarkenton,
hmm
if you want to be entertained, go pull it up on YouTube. He was an entertaining guy and a
hmm
fairly good guy. The Vikings did make three Super Bowls. I think at least two of them he was the quarterback. So they lost, but they had some success. And for people like Ty, who's a big Vikings fan, um, you know, uh, his name would probably come up if you mentioned great Vikings quarterbacks. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
If you're
I
mentioning great
digress.
Vikings quarterbacks, obviously he's going to come up. But if you mention great quarterbacks, even great quarterbacks from the 70s, I mean, Staubach and Bradshaw are going to come up well before anyone else.
Sure.
Some may even mention Bob Greasy just because he won two Super Bowls.
Yeah, and you know what? That was before me. All I've seen
hmm
of Bob Greasy are highlights. I
The
think of Bob
glasses.
Greasy as, yeah, with the glasses and as being leader, but
Mm-hmm.
My understanding of those Dolphins teams were they were very run heavy with
Mm-hmm.
Zonka, Mercury Morris, and Jim Kick, and a good defense.
He's
Not that Greasy to Warfield wasn't a legitimate connection, but
mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah, we could go on all night, but
Yeah.
we said we wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went about 10 minutes over. Better than
That's all right.
35 minutes over.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess if you are one of our 20 viewers, maybe this will be the episode that gets us to like 20,000 suddenly. That'd be funny. Uh, anyway, thank you for tuning into another episode of Inside the Helmet. We'll be back next week with maybe some more coverage of any trades that have yet to happen yet. So if you're from
Cool.
the future, don't yell at us in the comments for not mentioning something that happened. Oh, why didn't you talk about Max Crosby going to the Patriots after the
Right.
Ravens pulled out of the deal? Well, because it hasn't happened yet.
Right. And tell your
So,
friends so we can get our viewership up.
right, tell your friends. And we'll also obviously, I will be back with coverage of the China race next week. So you'll have to listen to me. So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll see you next time.
Good night. God bless.